Gentlemen, welcome back to another Ask That. My name is Clark Sell. I'm the guy who asks all the questions. With me today, Chris DeMars. Chris, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, brother. Now that I'm home from work, how are you?
God bless you. Me too. I'm doing, although I am in my work, so it's kind of like this all the time. So,
lucky dog.
Chicago to Detroit, so you're on the other side of the pond, right?
Yep.
Or lake, for those
lake.
Who
Either or.
Technical.
Right. Yep, in Detroit. I love it.
Yeah, I've been there once.
Yeah.
That's it. Next week I'll be driving past it on my way up to northern Michigan, as I have to drive around the pond because, well, it takes too long to just go across the pond.
Yeah.
But it can be done. I have done it with the kids. We have done the ferry across the pond to, I forget the name of that town.
Muskegon?
Yes. It's a nice little do at one time.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about that when I come over for that conference. I was either going to take the ferry over, or I was going to drive over, or a buddy of mine, he was going to come up because he's going to be at that too, and he was going to pick me up. We were going to go all the way up through the UP and then come down.
Yes,
so still deciding.
That we're still deciding whether next week we go up and back down too. I have not been through the UP, and I've been. It's been on my list to see. Boy, it's after work. I'm forgetting all these names. The hell's the island up there?
Pictured Rocks, or Turnip Island.
Oh no! Goodness gracious! You take the bridge across.
Oh, Mackinac.
Mackinac. Yeah, go to Mackinac and kind of see what's around there and all that good stuff. So
that'd be fun. That'd be cool.
We're about an hour and a half south of there, but this is not what the people are looking to see right now. They don't care about my travel trips to around the pond. Before we go, let's quick introduction. Why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you're about?
So, like you said, my name is Chris DeMars. I'm a senior UI developer. I work for a company called United Shore. Recently, we just moved, so we're in Pontiac right now, which is probably about 40 minutes north of Detroit. We're the number one wholesale mortgage lending company in the United States, and I work there on a team of around 12 for the UI team. We support close to almost 200 back-end developers. So technology really fuels the company. We support all the back-end devs. We build out front-end systems, architect front-end systems, accessibility, performance. We have our own UI team initiatives that we do every few weeks or every month, every quarter. So it's fun. And I get to speak at conferences around the country. So
so you're in a little bit of everything. And I asked you earlier, what's the thing that keeps you up at night? And you said the web and the kind of people around it and accessibility and where things are going. So I found that as an interesting answer as the people around it and where it's going. Where do you think the web is going?
Oh, it's such a robust thing, right? And you have all this JavaScript that's kind of like fueling the web, but then you also have the rest of the front end stack that's kind of like being left behind. And I want to see it come back together the way it was, originally. I really want to see that in the future of the web, not the future of JavaScript, right? Because the web is bigger than just JavaScript, I'm a little biased. Yeah, to see where it's going to go, to see where it's going to end up, because it's already in vehicles and wearables. Just recently, probably a few weeks ago, I found out that Microsoft, they created an accessible controller for gamers with disabilities, so they can hook it up to like click pads and mice and keyboard and stuff like that, so they can use and experience these games that they want to play using an accessible controller. And I thought that was just mind-blowing. It's like I use that in my accessibility talks when I give those. I'm like, that's huge. That's where the web's going. And there's more focus around accessibility. There's more visibility around it. And it's great to see stuff like that.
What do you mean, can we dive into that? What do you mean the web is going? Isn't the web, it's not inherently taking us there? What is it about the web that's fueling that? Is it the fact that it's just on every single desktop, every phone, everything? Is it the reach that it has, or is there something inherently new about it?
I think it's both. I mean, there's a lot of new stuff too, right? Like for me personally, the future of the front end and the future of layout, I believe is, grid, flexbox, CSS variables. So you really won't have to use preprocessors anymore. You bootstrap and foundation you don't have to use anymore. Yeah. But as far as like the reach, like it's gaining a lot more reach than years past, and it's everywhere. Like I said, wearables, desktops, phones, in your vehicles, like billboards, right? You got a lot of digital billboards out there now. I mean, it's everywhere, and it's all encompassing, and we're not going to get away from it. We need to be embracing it and just keep moving forward and keep pushing the limit of what the web can offer.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like it's this, part of the reason it is everywhere is because there is a set of standards around it, and yet gives this common language for everybody to speak, and that you can interpret that a few different ways, whether it's the code or just the computers and the browsers that have simplified it. But it certainly, as somebody who's been doing web development since the other century, it's cool to see where it's coming. But I feel like I feel like I say that every year, and yet I don't feel like we've moved at all. Meaning, everything's gotten better, and then we get to next year and we're like, we know more. We still got a long way to go. Can't wait to get there. And you get there the next year, and you're like, we can't wait till it gets there again.
Yeah, I think it's always going to be that. Like, so like I started in 1996 building web pages, and all we had was HTML, right? JavaScript was starting to come around. CSS was starting to come around. But like from there till now, like it's insane. And it's going to keep moving forward, and we're going to say that next year because it's always going to constantly keep moving forward. We'll never be able to catch up. Yeah. But we're always going to want just that 1 more % of change, and that 1 more % of change, right? And it's just going to constantly evolve until we don't have computers anymore, and it's just going to be like we'll grab something out of thin air and open it up and just do what we got to do.
So are you trying to imply that we're somehow going to be running V8 in our head and
that's how it's going to work?
Rendering node scripts on the fly.
I believe that's probably what's going to happen. If you're familiar with BCI, so I have a podcast and it's called Tales from the Script.
Okay. And
I interviewed Alex Castillo, who was at the time he was at Netflix, but he was doing a lot of amazing stuff with brain-computer interface boards and JavaScript and neurotechnology. And he was talking about how you can read brainwaves and you can like make art out of that, and you can read like EEGs and EKGs. And I watched he took a video one day and he put it on Twitter. He was controlling a drone with just his brain and a BCI board and a headset. That's it. Like if you can do stuff like that, there's no telling what is in store for the web.
Yeah, that's impressive because like some of my JavaScript, if that's the way I was flying my drone, I'd crash it.
I've done that a few times off the ground. So
move. It's not moving.
Yeah. What's the function? What's the method? I don't know what it is. I'm not a JavaScript engineer, so I would fail terribly at that.
Sure. What have been some of the things that you? I'm gonna start on the negative side. What are some of the things that you just hate the most about the web, or you see that there needs to be the biggest improvement?
The emphasis on JavaScript and how it's the end all be all. That's a problem, and there's a big problem with developers like myself who don't write JavaScript every day, or maybe have written less than 50 lines their whole entire life, who are looked at as second-class developers, and we're really devalued in the industry. And I talk about this a lot in my one of my CSS talks, and it's been brought up. There's a handful of people in the industry that are like me and have brought this up as a topic, whether it's like on podcasts or have written about it or have spoken about it at conferences. That needs to change because HTML and CSS and everything else that's part of the front end stack is very important and crucial to making the web what it is. And I think that's probably what I hate the most and the biggest issue I have. That's reasons why friends of mine can't get new jobs in the industry, because they can do amazing things on the front end, but they can't build something in React. Well, if you can't build it in React, we don't need you. That's got to stop. And the same with me. Like I haven't gotten jobs before because I'm not a JavaScript engineer, but I excel so much on the other stuff.
Sure.
And I do tons of community stuff, and I speak at conferences, and I write at the web. It seems like none of that stuff matters anymore, and passion doesn't get you a job anymore. It's whether or not you can build something in React and in JavaScript, and I think that needs to stop. And I think it's coming to a halt, but we still need a lot of people to speak up, especially like the JavaScript engineers who can't write HTML and CSS. They need to speak up and be a voice for us.
Yeah.
And I have like friends who are Microsoft MVPs or C# devs who are like, we would kill to have somebody like you on our team that can build out that front end. We can handle the JavaScript and the TypeScript and the C#, but we need somebody that can build out like a design system, an HTML, the markup and the styles and accessibility, and care about that stuff. It just seems like it's not cared about anymore, and we need to change that.
So, I mean, you're really describing more of a people person, not necessarily a language problem. And so I'll pause there for a second. Would you say that's true? I mean, introducing new languages, a new star script language or whatever, that certainly doesn't fix the problem. It just kind of creates more shining balls and an already shiny ball plays. So, so we're really talking about people and culture.
Yeah, I would say it's probably people and culture. It's more or less, I think it's hiring and the mindset that companies have. And I guess you could relate that back to people. But just the whole JavaScript being the end all be all to the front end, that needs to stop, because the web is, for a minute, the web started taking a turn for the worst, in my opinion. And like I said, I think it's starting to come back now a little bit with more people voicing, speaking up, saying that, HTML and CSS is a very valued skill, and this is something you should have. And nobody should devalue somebody because they're not a JavaScript engineer.
Yeah, totally. Do you think, I mean, you said you started doing this stuff in 96, and I started around 98, 97, 98. And I think through this time, the past 20 years, we've seen companies kind of value and devalue certain technologies and stacks and things in that nature. I feel like we're at a time right now where, I'll say big co, things are commoditized, and some of that is the worldly play that we live in and rates across the pond and whatnot, not pond like Michigan, but actual ocean water. Not to demise anybody, but globally rates are substantially different across countries and cultures and whatnot. And because we play in this international landscape, it's easy to get somebody from yet a different country at a different rate that may work for your commoditized thing. And I often feel like the companies have set this kind of weird artificial barrier of like, get shit done. To your point, this becomes this emphasis on like what you can do and not necessarily how it's done or where it relates to the other stuff. Partly because people just want stuff done yesterday and they saw the stupid Hello World demo, and so we get out of the habit of thinking of accessibility. We get out of the habit of thinking about good error handling, or why are we even building something in the first place if we're just replacing the same pixels we had before. Like, what's the point if we're not actually helping the users? I mean, do you think a lot of that's a contributor to that? Because that's a big, I think it's a big issue just in general. I don't think it's a web thing. I think that's just kind of across the board.
Yeah. No, I see that as being a problem too, and not even like speaking like outside of another country, like in the U.S. or even in Canada or whatever the case may be, because it could be the same way in another country with the people, looking for people outside of their country.
Sure.
There is that mentality of get shit done, and whether it's done right or wrong, we don't care. Just get it done, and that's a problem. Yeah. Because it's got to be done right. We are all, I like to use the term craftspeople. These are our passions. These are things we care about. And now, granted, you do have that 9-to-5 dev who just goes to work and doesn't do anything outside of that and doesn't want to learn. That's fine and dandy. That's great. But there needs to be some type of quality associated with the code you're writing. So, and that probably does go, that probably goes back to like people and hiring and recruiters not knowing exactly what to look for. They're just reading off a sheet that's in front of them.
Yeah.
Right. Not caring about the quality of the code is like, if you can do it and get it done, great. But as far as quality, we don't really care. Just it and ship it, right?
Yeah, and quality for me is kind of twofold. It's not just, did your thing have errors, but is it doing what you said you were going to do well? And that's a much bigger thing that even as somebody who's played architect for a long time, even the emphasis on kind of designing a system and making sure that it works in the culture of which it lives in whether that's people or other systems, whatever, even that's, kind of de-emphasized quite a bit of, just get the thing done. And I don't have an answer for that one.
It's all mixed up. It's all screwed up. The web is all screwed up and will ever always be screwed up. It's never not been screwed up. So
yeah, but to be fair, I don't think it's just the web. I think it's anything kind of in the tech stack, and unfortunately in any industry, I don't feel like manufacturing's screwed up, but healthcare, man, they got that fixed because
right.
As somebody who has run some healthcare projects, I'll tell you they need a little help too.
I believe that for sure.
All right, so that was kind of on the bad side of things, or what could be most improved. What do you then feel, swinging 180 other way? What is some of the most exciting, awesome things that you think is there?
Oh, definitely the improvements or the new things like coming out with CSS. I think that's really, really big. I mean, Flexbox and Grid, they're not really new, but with with Grid and Flexbox starting to be more supported across browsers, it's changing the way we do layout.
Yeah.
And you don't need Bootstrap anymore. You don't need Foundation anymore. Because even with Bootstrap and Foundation, you weren't able to do the layouts that you can do now with Grid. And I think that's an amazing thing. We can be very creative on the web. We can add a sense of artistry to what we're doing now. We can create flyer and magazine style layouts with these types of, specifications. I think that's huge, and that's something we can all, celebrate as a group of people working on the web. I think it's huge, and I can only see it going up from there. And then accessibility is gaining a lot more visibility, and it's great to see people giving a shit about accessibility and wanting to hear people speak about accessibility and learn ways to make their experiences accessible. I think that's huge too, and that's a good thing for the web and people and just in general the industry.
So for those, yeah, I totally agree on the layout stuff. Like it's fantastic. When you look at something, you go, yeah, that should have been done like 20 years ago. It just totally makes sense. Thanks for now introducing it. It's always well received because it's super nice. Accessibility, let's talk about that for a bit because I don't think everybody, let's take the people who are maybe in a small shop or they're only a couple persons, trying to sling this and they're under the grind, got a boot on their throat. What does that really mean? Like, where does one get started in that if they don't have any exposure to trying to be more accessible for people?
So accessibility, and more specifically web accessibility, really just means that everybody can use the web. Not just people with disabilities, everybody can use the web. I mean, easy ways to get started. I like to call them easy wins. Like when you're writing semantic markup, by default, it's already accessible. You can tab through it. It's announced by screen readers as to what it is. Another easy win is just always remembering alt attributes on your images. You should always have alt attributes, and I learned that years and years and years and years ago when I got started. As long as you have descriptive text in that alt attribute, even if you don't even have an image, it's still there and it can be announced by a screen reader. So that's like another easy win. Or adding certain types of ARIA labels, and ARIA stands for Accessible Rich Internet Applications. If you add ARIA labels to like icons or X's in the corner of a modal that say close, or like Twitter, Facebook, that way when a screen reader gets to those and you focus to those, the screen reader will announce Twitter, or if you're in a modal, it'll announce exit or close, and that way you can interact with that element to get out of that or trigger some type of behavior. Those are some easy wins. There's a lot of tools out there to audit and test to see if you are accessible if your experiences are accessible or not. Like stuff I use at work and use at home. I feature in a lot of my accessibility talks.
What are some sites that do it really well?
So I don't want to plug. It's going to be a shameless plug, but we just recently, a couple months ago, released a website called findamortgagebroker.com, and I worked on 99% of the accessibility on that. And when we launched, I was running audits in Lighthouse just to check up on it, and we were getting scores of 100 out of 100 in Lighthouse. And that was huge because that was the first application that we released as a company to the outside world that was accessible. And a huge win, super proud of it. So that's a good one. I know that Virgin America Airlines, I think theirs is really good now. After Marcy kind of called them out, Marcy Sutton, she's a senior front-end engineer for DQ, and DQ makes a lot of the accessibility products in the industry. She actually demoed one of their website, I think at JSConf a couple years ago, and since then, like Virgin Atlantic or Virgin American, they fixed their stuff. So that's a really good one. Let's see what else. There's a couple. I think whitehouse.gov is a good one. But they have a certain level of accessibility they have to hit.
Sure,
so that's another. Site. Yeah, so that's a good one. I'm sure there's a handful more out there. So
you made you said something enlightening. You said make it accessible for everyone. Not just people with disabilities. What does it mean outside of the browser? I mean, the web now is kind of everywhere. So what does accessibility look like in an Alexa-like experience or something non-browser but still web?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I'd have to look into it. I'm sure that you would try. I don't even know if they have a spec behind anything like that. Like voice interactions. I don't think there's a spec for, since it's already announcing what's going on. But yeah, that's something cool to look into. I'd have to check that out and reach out to a few people.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
You've mentioned the automotive space, which is just ripe for the picking.
Mm-hmm.
Have you done much or messed much around in the automotive space with the web stuff?
I have not. But you always hear the claim that this person's blind, they'll never buy a car. And that's like complete bullshit, right? Because they might have a driver, right? So they're going to want to buy a car, or they might have like a caretaker or one of their kids. You never know. But they're going to want to have a vehicle at some point. Yeah. And if that experience, like say your in-dash units, I'm pretty sure most of your in-dashes, it can read out loud to you what's going on. So, but I'm sure there's extra things that you can buy or extra extensions and stuff like that for your disability or whatever use case that may be.
Yeah. How is it? Since you were so involved in yours, what did you work with a lot of users to, I'll say, ideate on your design and what worked well? I mean, as somebody who's done a lot of design work from the visual aspect, from an accessibility aspect, what does the design process look like?
So the specific stuff that we're releasing out to our customers actually comes from our marketing design team. So I don't really have a hand in designing those experiences. But when they do come down, I'll look at colors and I'll look at the way things are laid out, because accessibility starts with design. And I'll look at things and we'll start building out components, and I'll start running audits on them. And if certain things don't work, certain colors don't work, I go back to the business and I'd say, hey, listen, color A, B, and C doesn't work. And sometimes we'll have to sit together with the marketing team, the marketing design team, and just tweak those colors a little bit, or tweak fonts to make them, the sizes to fit right, depending on the level of accessibility we're trying to hit. So, I mean, it's really a collaborative process because we have to work with the marketing design team.
Sure. Do you find you get much user feedback in the accessibility space?
Not so much. The most user feedback I would get would be grabbing people that on the floor who are experiencing, or have some type of disability. Like I work with developers who are colorblind. I work with a developer who's deaf in one ear. QA that's colorblind. Business analysts that are colorblind. And I'll get their,
Sure.
Opinion on it, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, can you read this, and how do these colors look, and can you visually see what's going on in this part of the experience, or does this widget make sense as far as like language? And I'll usually get their feedback, but as far as like outside feedback, I probably wouldn't be the one to see it, unfortunately. So
sure. Yeah, I mean, not everybody has that. I hate to use the word resources, but has that ability to go to somebody and ask. Something we should certainly share. Are there actually? I know there's specs around doing accessibility. Are there guidelines around kind of, if you think of like the material design? Is there an accessibility material design, if you will?
So the material design would probably just focus on meeting the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1, and that's kind of like for everything universally.
So, inherently kind
of
get it.
Exactly. Regardless if you have an input and the input is in Bootstrap foundational material, it still has to follow what the WCAG says.
Yeah, I was kind of a bad example. It was more of the, is there a industry best kind of guidelines for accessibility, like we have these kind of material design that says, do this, and Apple's coming out their design, but I recognize that they're bigger.
Yeah, universally it's all the same, but then you can also have your own like best practices for the application or your team or your organization.
Yeah. All right, so we are coming at the end of our time, and at the end of every one of these, there's a few things that happen. One, I like to extend a bit of gratitude to the other individual, and you and I have been trying to have this conversation now for I don't know. Seems like 2 months. I mean, we've had scheduling snafus and travel and vacations and whatever. I don't know why I said vacation. I haven't been on vacation in years. But I want to thank you, not just for being here, not for just speaking at that conference this year, but for kind of being out there and present with everybody and being more involved in just the day to day. So, with that being said, thank you for that. I'm looking forward to seeing you this summer here in a few.
I'm excited.
Which brings me to my last question. Is something that I've asked everybody. How do you, Chris, define? How would you define community, and what does it mean to you?
Ooh, that's a good question because I'm so involved. I define community as a group of people coming together to A, learn, B, foster that learning and relationships, and C, probably just making whatever it is that you're coming together for, making it better, and spreading the word on whatever that is. What was the second question?
And what is it? And what does it mean to you?
That's what it means to me. It means being out there, talking about all the amazing things that you can do in that industry, ours being web and software, bringing people together, sharing that knowledge, and pushing people to want to do better, and pushing people to be the best that they can be. And I have to give a shout out to a lot of people out there who have pushed me. A handful of them I speak with at conferences all the time, and they push me to do my best and push me to write and keep recording podcasts and speak at conferences. Like, that's what community is, to have a strong backbone for you when you're not strong enough to do the things that you should be doing. That's what community is to me.
I love it. I also love how you started that with putting it in an ordered list. Just,
Hey, that's what I'm a UI developer.
Just saying, like, yeah, you're the first person who's given it an A, B, and C, like very like.
Hey, I'm an organized fella.
I could tell. Well, listen, thank you for the time today, everybody who is watching. We will drop some links in the description below. Leave us a comment. Tell us hi. Give us a thumbs up. And we'll see you next time. Chris, peace.
Thank you.